Hi and welcome back. This lesson we're going to do a quick code review. We've got our application working as intended, and now we can do a quick code review, reviewing all of the functionality that we've created in the earlier lessons. So we added some styling to make it look good, and of course you can apply your own styling and make it look and apply your own customized look and feel to this game. So the styling I'm not going to be reviewing. This was just for a better look and feel. We also have our HTML, so our HTML structure of the application. So this is where our starting point was, and the way that we usually design the games is we come in and we determine what interactions and what information we're going to need to play to the user, so what interactions they're going to need in order to play the game, as well as what we need to output to them. Next, we use JavaScript to connect to the document object model to document objects elements, so connecting to those elements using variables in JavaScript, so connecting to those instances. And this gave us the ability to really access those within the code. We also had to set up a bunch of variables. So the deck is where the deck of cards is sitting. The players array is going to be containing all the player information, and you can see this as you output in the console. So once we've got our players array, you see that all this that's contained within here are the divs, and these are the output divs, but they also give us a count and a count of which players are active. So if we have a number of players, if we have 4 players or 5 players, so this is all dynamically generated, and we get access to all of those elements there. We also have another array that we created, so that's the deals. And what the deals is essentially what cards the players have contained within their hand, and then this is what fluctuates as we play the game. We also have rounds, so we have an option to have multiple round attacks. So rounds are always at 0, and we loop through multiple rounds. In play gave us an option to set it as true or false, and that allowed us to continue the play or restart the play. And then lastly, we have total, which basically was just a total count of the cards, and it allows us to be able to detect which are the winners. And then the ranks and suits were arrays that we used in order to build the deck of cards. We looped through the buttons, adding event listeners to all the different buttons. We have 2 buttons essentially on the page, so we have a start and attack, and we have different functionality for each one. So we detect what the inner text is, what the text content of that element is, and if it's start, then we set the message color to black. We toggle the buttons, and the toggle the buttons function, basically what this is, it's toggled the hide to the button. So if it has it, it removes it, and if it doesn't have it, it adds the class of hide, and what hide does was show it. So that gave us that functionality where we've got the start button, we click start, and we end up with seeing only the attack button. And we also toggle the buttons when we win the game in order for us to restart the game. We have a start game, so this is basically our setup function where we set in play to true, we clear out the gameplay in our HTML, we set up the number of players within the input there, so we grab the number of players that the user has asked for, so 3, 2, whatever. We build the deck of cards, we set up the players, which set up the arrays, deals out the cards and deal cards, and this was our starting card player that we were dealing to. And then we were making the cards, so that was the round where we show the cards visually to the player, so that was the make cards function. And this was one of the crucial ones where every time we want to redeal the cards, or this could also be dealing the cards out to the players. And then we also were updating that input value to 1, because instead of the number of players, when we hit start, this is how many rounds we're playing in the attack. So by default, maybe we only want to have 1, but the way this game goes, sometimes it's more fun if you can play multiple rounds at once, so you don't have to keep pressing attack, attack, attack. So that's what we have that option for the player. We also have one to show the cards. So basically what happens here is we construct the card, creating elements using JavaScript create elements, and we construct the card. So we also used our styling in order to style the look and feel of the cards to make them look more like playing cards. We have deal round, which is a function that we created in order to handle the playoffs, and a lot of the functionality was the same as when we deal the cards. So this was where we determine who the winner is. We loop through all the players in the player list, by default it's going to be all the players, and then as we play the game, the player list can shrink. And also if we're have a playoff situation, then the player list is only going to include the players that are in the playoffs. So this is going by the player's index value, so it's not 1, 2, 3, it's 0, 1, 2, so as it falls within the array list. Temp holder was the noun of cards that have been played and have been drawn. So basically what happens is that the temp holder array of cards ends up going to the winner once we determine who the winner is. So all of this was to determine who the winner is. We also select a card from the player's hand, and we check to see if it's the high card, and if it is, then we add it into the winner. If it's the first time, if there's no other cards in the playoff, that means that we need to push the current player as well as the new player. So that gives us the two players in the playoff situation. We also have our current winner. So we determine if we have a current winner and the card value of the current winner. So we're adjusting who the current winner is at that point. And then we're adding in the selected card into the temp holder. So because that card has been played, so we're adding it into our holding section. And then show card function allows us to show the card. So we select and we show which player we are showing the card, so by index value, which also allows us to select that element object. So essentially players, and the temp player index value selects the element that the cards are going to be output to, and then the card information is passed into show card as well. And we keep going through until we have no more playoffs. And if we do have a playoff situation where we have a tie for the leading card, then we have to go through deal round again, and we're passing in those two players, and as well as we're adding in the temporary cards. So going in and we're continuously loop through this function until we find a winner. When we find a winner, we pass that into the function called updater. Make cards is the one that we run by default when we attack. What this does is it sets a basic holder section for the cards, and this is just going to be blank. So we don't actually need to even pass anything in here. We could do this to shorten the function if we wanted to, as we don't have any content being passed in there. The players list we do build as we loop through all of the available players and see which ones' hands have more than 0 cards. And if they have more than 0 cards, then we push them into the list so that we can play through them. And if the player's list length is equal to 1, so this is a failsafe, that if we only end up with one player in the game, then we automatically run the win condition to break them out of the game. The win condition resets the messages, toggles the buttons, sets in play to false, outputs information, who the winner and who the losers are, and then also resets our original message so that we can restart the game and select the number of players, updates the input value to be 3. Updater is the function that we run when we've selected a winner. So we get our winner, we know who the winner index value is, as well as the temp holder. So then within players, we get the winner, passing in the style and updating the background color to green so it's more visual who the winner is. We resort the temp holder so that it's, this was just a really quick function to resort an array randomly. So that we don't always have the same order of cards. So we play around a little bit with the order of cards. Then we loop through the temp holder. So we loop through all the cards that are being held temporarily, and we add them to the winner's hand and list of cards. And then we also loop through all of the players. We create a div. We update the stats. So we add those stat information down here at the bottom. And then we also check to see the length. And if the length is equal to the total, then that means that we've won the game and it's game over. We update the inner HTML to the card length, and we just output some information that that player is now the winner, and we run the win game function. Otherwise, we output that they've lost and how many cards they have left. And then lastly, we append that value. So you see that happening here, where if we get how many cards are left for each one of the players. So that gives us some stats to work with. And then we also update the HTML of this tracking information down here below. So that gives us an overview of what happened on each round. Here we've got dealing of the cards to the players. So we loop through the deck of cards. And as we loop through, we add it to the player's hand. So the players each get a set of cards dealt out to them. This is where we're setting up the players. So we're building out the initial players. When we hit start, we've got the player 1, player 2, player 3 elements. So those are being created in setup players and created dynamically. We're setting the attributes to the player ID, which we're not using, but we could use if we needed to. We're also updating and adding a class of player, and then updating cards, appending it to our game area. So building that div and then appending it to the game area. And then we're also pushing that into the deals in order to prepare for slots to have an array with arrays inside of it that we can deal the cards out to. And then, so this is all done dynamically, so we have flexibility and we can select how many players we have within the game. Next, we're building the deck. So this was one of the first functions that we run, and this gives us the ability to create a new deck of cards. So when we want to have a deck of cards, we can just build a deck, and we can do it within this type of format. So within the card object, we get suit, rank, value, and we can push the card in. And then we, of course, we're utilizing the values to determine who had the winning card in the deck. So that was a quick summary and overview of all of the functionality that we've covered in the earlier lessons. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the section. I'm always happy to help address any questions, clarify any content. Thanks again for taking the course, and I do want to remind you that the source code has been included, so I do encourage you to try it out for yourself, experiment with it, and build your own version of the game.